Hello everyone, my name is Connor. I am one of the organisers of the Dublin Linux user group. Um, and I'll just bring up our webpage here, so this is dublinlinux.org. We are a user group that is based in Dublin, Ireland, and we do social events usually once a month, sometimes more often, but usually regularly once a month. Um, and we are on various social media, including Twitter, Meetup. We do have our Meetup page here, which is where our various events will be. We put up photos and so on and so forth. Okay, so just to explain what Linux is. So Linux is an operating system, just like Windows is an operating system, just like the Mac OS or Mac operating system. And Linux itself is very bare bones. Um, it can run on quite a number of devices, so it can run from things like your phone to bare circuit board type hobby devices such as the Raspberry Pi or something like that. Linux can run perfectly fine on that. It can also run everything up to a supercomputer that will be doing things like weather predictions, weather calculations, those sorts of things that supercomputers. It runs on servers, so web pages on the internet are hosted on quite a number of servers. A lot of those servers are running Linux. So Linux doesn't necessarily need a graphical user interface such as a desktop, such as what we have here. This is running Linux. But so at a bare bones level, it can just run. No need for any user interface or user interaction. You can issue commands, or there's a command line interface on some of the servers, but it's that is the very basic interaction. Now you can put graphical environments or graphical user interfaces on top of it, and there's different types depending on your preference. There's ones that are more familiar with the Mac operating system or Mac OS, where there's a toolbar or taskbar at the top and then a dock at the bottom. And there's ones that are more familiar to Windows. I spent quite a lot of my time on Windows, so I like or at least I am familiar with the Windows layout. So that's the reason why here I have my taskbar at the bottom, and I have a kind of a menu here. And some basic fundamentals here is you can see that there's a search bar here. On Windows it would be more down there, but it's roughly a rough approximate. And here, once if and so for those who are curious, this is what is known as the Cinnamon desktop environment. Cinnamon as in the spice, and it gives you a rough Windows-like layout, and so familiarity with people, some familiarity with people who are used to Windows. Now, Linux has a lot of your basic apps. One is called LibreOffice, and that is a cross-platform office suite. It's kind of similar to Microsoft Office. So if you're familiar with Microsoft Office, as in Microsoft Word, that would be the equivalent of LibreOffice Writer, which is a word processor. Microsoft Excel would be LibreOffice Calc, which is a spreadsheet. LibreOffice Impress is Microsoft PowerPoint, in other words, a presentation suite. So we'll just bring up LibreOffice Writer. Now, I have a dark theme. That's just my aesthetic decision, but this will also come in a light theme as well. See, you can see it's just your simple word processing with, and you can do your bullet points and so on and so forth. Now, one operating system or one version of Linux, I should say, or distribution or distro of Linux that is should be familiar to some people, or is more familiar. Hello, my name is Connor. I am one of the organisers of the Dublin Linux user group here in Dublin, Ireland. And this is just a introductory video in what is Linux and what is the community or the Dublin Linux user group about. So on the very basic level, what is Linux? So Linux is an operating system, just like Windows is an operating system or the Mac operating system is, and Linux itself can run everything from on something like your mobile phone, your smartphone. If you're running Android, it's running a version of Linux. It's not straight up Linux, it's been customized somewhat, but it is running a version of Linux. To anything from a hobby board or bare motherboard made for tinkering, such as a Raspberry Pi, which you can pick up quite cheaply. I believe it's about €35 or thereabouts. Prices may vary. Anything from those kind of lightweight environments to something that is such as a supercomputer doing your weather calculations, that sort of thing, and also in your web server. So your web page, when you're visiting a web page and that web page is coming from a server, a lot of the times, invariably, that server is running Linux. It would be in the majority of the cases. Now, having said that, made that point that Linux is quite a varied operating system, can run on quite a number of devices. That is in its most efficient level. So Linux is just a kernel, which is the basic, very, very, very fundamentals low down in the operating system, where it's just a basic interaction between hardware and software. Now, on top of that, you can build layers, layers such as the graphical user interface, which is quite nice for a desktop use case, such as here. This is running Linux. This is on my personal computer here. So this is a graphical user interface that's very reminiscent of Windows, because Windows is what I'm used to. There are graphical user interfaces that will be more Mac-like. So you can see here there's a taskbar at the bottom, and then a start menu here, with a search function. Now the search function just happens to be at the top, whereas on Windows it's down towards the bottom. But it's a rough approximate. They're not going to copy it exactly, but you can literally press the Windows key. Press the Windows key. I believe it's working. It doesn't seem to be working at the moment. But anyway, you can, with your mouse, go down here and just start typing. So, for example, Firefox. We'll bring up Firefox. I have the developer edition. But yeah, just a rough approximate of the Windows user paradigm, or the way you interact with Windows. Now here you can see this is our webpage, dublinlinux.org. If you have any questions, feel free to communicate on this. We are on Telegram, and we also hang out in Slack as well. We also are on Meetup. That's probably where we announce a lot of our events. You're usually quite often, as in once a month. We usually meet up in the pub. Sometimes we meet up more often than once a month. Now, for if you are new to Linux or want to introduce somebody to Linux, and you're thinking, there's quite a lot of different flavors of Linux or different distributions of Linux. This is true, and it can be quite confusing. The most new person friendly version of Linux that I would say is Ubuntu, which you can find here on ubuntu.com. I'll just bring you to the main webpage. So ubuntu.com, you go to downloads, desktop. Get the very latest version, which is Ubuntu 18.04. LTS means long-term support. So there are different versions of Ubuntu. The latest version happens to be a long-term support release. Now, there would be intermediary releases that are released every 6 months. The long-term support releases are released every 2 years. So the last one was 16.04, so 14.04, 12.04, and so on before that. These are usually supported for 5 years. Now, one thing I will say, remember I was talking about different user interfaces, and they can be similar to different operating systems. By default, Ubuntu, here's a screenshot of Ubuntu, is very Mac-like. I won't say it's the exact copy of Mac, but it's very Mac-like, as in there's a taskbar at the bottom and there's a dock. The dock happens to be up to one side rather than at the bottom, which Mac is by default. I have noticed some people using the Mac operating system do actually put their dock up on one side or the other. I believe there is a setting to move this dock down to the bottom, but it's just there the way it is by default. Now, by default, you can see there you have a default theme, which kind of has a purple, orange feel to it, with some browns into it as well. Sorry, but that is just simply the theme. You can change the theme around. If you want something that is more Windows-like in your layout, I would suggest, which is something that is based on Ubuntu, but is using something called the KDE desktop environment, which is Kubuntu. So it's Ubuntu, but with KDE, hence why it's called Kubuntu. Now, this, you can see, is more Windows more Windows-like, I should say, with your taskbar at the bottom, and you've a kind of a menu here, and you have your transparency, and if your computer supports it, which a lot of modern computers would support it, with your graphics card and so on, will support the transparency effects. Now, it's just a personal preference, but my one here is called Cinnamon. So that is the desktop environment. Another one that is based off Ubuntu, but is not officially supported by Ubuntu. Kubuntu is officially supported by Ubuntu. One that's based off one that's based off Ubuntu, but has the Cinnamon layout, is Linux Mint, and the very latest version is Linux Mint 19. And there you go. So this is based off Ubuntu, but has the Cinnamon layout. You can see here, you just look for Linux Mint 19. I believe it's linuxmint.com. There you go, Linux Mint. Now, 19 is, I believe, in the beta stage rather than the official released version. Yeah, beta. There we go. So Cinnamon. Now these two would be for something that is kind of an older computer, or you just want something that's very snappy and responsive. So for example, if you have a Windows XP era computer, I would recommend either of these two. Either the Mate, I know that looks like Mate, but it's the Mate environment, or the XFCE. Now, if you want to try any of these, Ubuntu, Linux Mint, etc., Kubuntu, you want to try these, but you don't actually want to just run it on your computer, there's something that I recommend which is called VirtualBox. So you can see here I do have Ubuntu and I do have Kubuntu, so I'll just say launch Ubuntu. Now what this does is it runs a virtual machine, or as far as the operating system is concerned, the operating system is running on hardware, but the hardware is virtualized. In other words, it's not actually running on hardware, it's in a virtual environment. But it's a handy way of first getting your feet wet, trying one or two of the flavors out, and seeing if one suits you over the other, or one desktop environment suits you over the other. Now here you can see I customized it a bit, so I have changed the default background. I've also changed the icons, so these are perfectly customizable. You can see here you have your Firefox web browser. Now it is launching slow because it is in a virtual environment, so do not think that the launching of these applications is final. So that you can go to Amazon.com. There you go. Now I will show you, since I have one here, I'll show you Kubuntu as well. Now usually if you want a different version, you would put a K in front of it. Oh, that's an old version of Kubuntu, so I'm not going to do that. There was a very old version of Kubuntu. I'd forgotten which versions I had installed here, but yeah, you get the idea. Now, usually for K or the KDE environment, you put Kubuntu. For XFCE or the XFCE environment, as I was talking about with Linux Mint XFCE, you put an X, so that'll be Xubuntu. Some people call it Xubuntu or Xubuntu. Kubuntu, Ubuntu, it's the easiest way to do it. And now there is a more light version called the LXDE desktop environment. Now that is extremely lightweight. That would be on an XP machine, but an early XP machine. If you just want something that just works straight out of the box, and they're not concerned about your flashy graphics or anything like that, and that would be Lubuntu. Now there is one that is based off of Mate, or the Mate environment, which I had here, Mate. That is Ubuntu Mate. If I can even spell today, I believe it's Ubuntu-Mate. And I believe it's .org. I was correct. So that is Ubuntu, but the Mate environment. So that is Ubuntu Mate. Now what I'll do is I will wrap up this video, and let me know if you found this video useful. So once again, I got rid of my web browser, but once again, I am part of the Dublin Linux user group, and our webpage is dublinlinux.org. Okay, thank you.